to another episode of Days to Happy. I'm grateful to have Sanjay Gogate. Sanjay was most recently a chief of Aerospace Medical Education Division with the United States Air Force in aerospace medicine, a flight surgeon. I thought it'd be great to speak with Sanjay about his experience of human connection. But Sanjay, I want to thank you for taking the time to meet with us today.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here. I know I'm following your podcasts for a little while, and now that I'm officially retired, I can speak solely for me and my opinions, and hopefully share knowledge with others out there, and maybe help their lives.
If there's anything out of bounds, just say, no way, Jose. All right.
Definitely.
Just from your perspective, we were talking about people to people connection. And this seems to be one of the greatest issues, especially in youth, taking a look at their screens and so on and so forth. But even when you're face to face, sometimes that's not happening. When you're talking people connection, I wanted to see if you'd be willing to share your view of that and where you have seen it be impactful, but also things that you've learned yourself along the way.
Yeah, thanks. I did just finish 20 years in the Air Force from 2005, January 3rd to July. So it's actually 20 and a half years. But the point is that it's almost 2 decades, but it's a generation. And so to kind of highlight what you're talking about, there's been a lot of changes. Change is good. It's part of growth and in humanity, and time waits for no man or woman. And so it's fascinating to see just the Americans, the world, humanity, how much it's changed in 20 years. As you mentioned, some technology like 20, I'm going to use those two as perspectives because I
Yeah.
think it can teach us a lot. But when I joined in 2005, there was no iPhone, there wasn't internet, there was email, but it was in very spoon-fed doses. I'll kind of set the stage there and let you ask some more pointed questions from some of my experiences.
Right. Well, in that, I have noticed that. So you said that 2005 we didn't have the iPhones. So 2 years later is when we really got. Heck, I had the BlackBerry and I thought it was the coolest thing, but it didn't allow that same kind of crazy interaction. And then the advent of Facebook. I believe Facebook was around 2008, shortly after the iPhone, or perhaps in. Yeah, if I'm
Yeah, I
looking.
think I think early parts was MySpace, which was very
That's right.
similar. It was, kind of a fall on to the late 90s, early 2000s with AOL online, where it
Yes.
was some of the first group chats where I think it was brilliant. It was the true, beauty of when internet came on as someone from rural US, Brazil, Africa, India, Russia, all of a sudden
Right.
you could be speaking to someone. I want to say the early hubs were US only, if I
Yes.
recall correctly. And then it kind of truly became worldwide because there weren't very good language translators in the early days. But for Americans in the Western world countries, it was revolutionary to have chat rooms where everything was popping up every day. It was amazing how humans quickly morphed to sports fans in this one. And so I think it allowed some people to find comfort, people sharing common ideas and beliefs. And that was the true beauty of the internet. It's still there. It's the ability to share knowledge quickly. It might not be accurate, but you can still share something in the instant, whereas before it was news media, newspaper,
Yes. Yes.
and maybe a phone call.
I was clearing out the closet the other day and I found our phones. I remember,
Plug in, right? Yeah.
I remember when they were the first non-cordless ones. It
Oh,
shows the
wow.
age,
That's
but
right. That was big technology,
it,
2.4 gigahertz with the
right. But then with all this social media and these modes of communication, what was it that you saw after the general wow, that wow factor? Where did you start seeing some of the concerns from both a civilian and military standpoint, where it started chipping away from that ability to maintain communication and even have negative effect?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think the military, the one thing I came in as a physician, a doctor, so we went to officer training school. The non-professional degree holders come in as enlisted, and they're thrown into kind of a boot camp, 8 weeks plus depending on the service, where you're kind of thrown in, and there's an indoctrination. And
Right.
we had that in '05 in Montgomery, Alabama, for our officer training school. They wanted to make it more strict, so we got a good flavor where a military training instructors getting pretty close to you on the first day going from the bus to maybe 100 yards. It felt like 10 miles where they're like,
Right.
"What are you doing? March." I've never marched. You're trying to stay in sequence. It's a stress inoculation right from the start. They're trying to see how you respond, and
Right.
and there's a group of 8 and you're trying to fit in, and that's kind of
Right.
what the military is looking for. It's an indoctrination, stress inoculation, and they're hoping to stress you so that should you have to go to war, you're not going to be incapacitated and not able to think. They used to call it shell shocked in World War II, where
Mhm.
someone's
Yeah.
just can't think or do anything, in which case they have to, what do we move them somewhere, or they're just in the way and a risk to themselves and others. So,
Right.
so that's
Right.
probably the first thing. And one thing I'd like to bring up is I look at my whole 20-year career. If I could take one of the best things the military taught me, maybe it'll help others, is they had us focus. Culture thing was one of the popular beliefs was three core things to believe in. One was faith, family, and friends. They're not required. Not
Mm.
everybody in the military believed in God or a religion, which is fine.
Right.
It's just those three made it easier if you had those. So they would always preach faith, family, and friends. What I found was that as you have stressors, moving bases, deaths, family, friends,
Yeah.
coworkers, the faith, family, and friends are who you can go to.
Yeah.
Those were great because everybody has tough times. From day one, you join that team, you take care of each other. That was part of the culture too, even though the stress inoculation was, hey, part of the motif is your little element of people or flight as you get bigger, as we call it in the Air Force, and platoon, the Army. And so you build a camaraderie, and you take care of each other because you're
Right.
only as strong as your weakest link. So,
Hmm.
so
Hmm. Hmm.
some folks will try to haze the weakest link, but the reality is you're only as good as your weakest link. Weak first to see
Yes.
who will help them or respond, and you grow a lot, and you realize that there are powers in numbers, and as a group, that's another lesson. There was group therapies, and culture is important to help someone, because if they're truly caring and you buy into the spirit de corps, like we're one team, one fight. That's very powerful. Throughout the world, militaries still use that. And
Right.
small groups, football teams, basketball, art club. You start with the group, and they call it storming and then norming. You might
Yeah.
have some
Yeah.
fights, and then hopefully you normalize. And a good leader should step up, make it known that, hey, what do we want to be known as? And if we want to be a noble group, then we create either written or some orders and rules where we take care of each other and we don't pick on the weakness. Those are probably the best groups where they hold everybody accountable.
Yeah. This is great stuff because you just made me realize something. When it comes to team sports, when it comes to the military and such, you do have that incredibly strong camaraderie. And that faith, family, and friends thing is a big deal because in absence of the family, you have your friends there. You have that unit, have that religious aspect too. And I find it very compelling as far as studies on PTSD and whether that be military, whether that be athletics, whether that be leaving your job, that familiarity and that connection is gone. And you are newly retired. I'm wondering if it is possible to talk about what your experience has been because you came from that very structured environment. I know your family, awesome family, and I know that you're a man of faith and you have a lot of friends. But from a military perspective, now the structure isn't quite there. How has that been on you?
It's definitely difficult. They say there's a transition time, maybe in your last year of retirement, when you've been so used to order structure
Yeah.
and a pattern of life. It is difficult. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say it's a 9. I don't care how
Right.
well prepared people are from leaving the military. The only thing I can liken it to is if you went to the same school
Yeah.
from elementary, kindergarten, all the way through middle and high school, and you've been with the same kids. If you finish high school and you all were, the old phrase like meaning
Yeah.
bonded,
Yes.
these are your besties, and you experienced many things together. That feeling when you part ways, some will go on to work, some will go to college, so you have a new group of friends with the military your transition's not a it's not a preordained thing where everybody goes to guaranteed jobs or even knows where they're going to live. It's a life balance thing where you do have family, they become the highest priority. Not that they weren't before, but the reality was if you get called to war, that is your number one priority, even
Yes.
though you do have a family. And I think that's one of the best things for everyone is all of a sudden that bag you always have packed ready to go out the door, at least those who are on alerts and or in jobs that were highly deployable. You always have that bag. You probably still, I still have the bags packed. In
Oh,
fact,
do
my
you?
wife's like, when are we gonna get rid of these? I'm like, well, they're actually quite useful. They have a lot
Yeah.
of kits in there, change of clothes, and so I'm still transitioning. But that's probably the biggest thing is you always knew we're ready for a call to head somewhere far away in the night.
Wow. You highlighted something else that I never thought of, was that you're actually going to battle with that strong group of friends. And perhaps that might be when you come back out of the military or athletics, you haven't been to battle with the family. And so that forging, I've never even thought of that before. Just what an added layer of reinforcement to the unity of something. But I could see where the lack of that might contribute to that feeling of non-belonging or feeling lost. Am I off on that?
No, I think you're spot on, and I think you're bringing some memories. So for everybody on listening, I was medical, I was a physician. So, but there are deployable physician slots. So I wasn't the type to go kick on a door. Or some of those folks who are really tight units, the
Yeah,
special forces. Although I did work with special operations previously, but more from the medic standpoint. When I was younger, you do go with the small teams, but
right.
as you get older in rank and things they make you do more administrative. But what you hit on there was, I think, one of the toughest things I ever did, or any of those frequent deployers do, is interacting with your family with an indefinite amount of time. And you don't
Wow.
know that in 3 months you're going out the door again for training or prep, or in 9 months, because when you're retired, you're home indefinitely. I'll be honest, it just, there's, brain and human relations. And
Right.
when it's your own family and you've been putting, I don't want to say on the back burner, but the reality is the mission always came first. It can hurt very close. Speaking personally, your spouse, whether you're
Yeah.
male or female, if they weren't military, they dealt with covering when you're gone a lot.
Right.
There's a lot of conversations and relationships you didn't have that they had to fill or put off until you're back. Most of the military across the world get trained in survival, evasion, resistance, escape, SERE kind of training and mental fortitude. But when it's your own family and
Yeah.
you're back, those spouse's words can really sting, and you need to rely on that faith family. In this
Yeah.
case, a a painful point into your face and heart
Right. Yeah.
because there's some pent up anger there or a real issue. And then friends might be your only ally, or a medical professional too, because
Mhm.
it's not like, oh, let's go do the mission. It's,
Yeah.
honey,
Yeah.
go do the dishes. I need help with this. I need that. I need this. From military, you usually get used to checklists, and it can mess with your mind when, well, what's the highest priority? Feeding the kids or getting them dinner ready? Or is it, no, I need you up here now, help him with this. And it's probably the hardest thing I've done in my life was engaging with my family because it's not as easy as reading a book. The reality is things will pop up,
Yeah.
a kid at 5:01 who wants to stay on their device and is throwing a tantrum now, or the weather's like right now, it snowed 4 inches here this morning. Like you can't, everybody's cooped up inside together. So the family interaction is very important because everybody wants to have a high functioning family of loved ones. Like I said, faith family, and be great at it. It's definitely on the job training as you grow, assuming you have a two-person adult household. You are the leaders
Yeah.
because you've been gone so long. It's hard to just come in and say, "Hey, I'm the boss. Here's what we're doing."
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
You'll
Yes.
have a, it's called where you overthrow a leader suddenly. Yeah, yeah, it's insurgency. And
Insurgency.
I'm laughing. There's nothing when you see the horrible deaths in real
Right.
military or country, but in your own family. And actually you do feel it. I can laugh because it's my humor to get
Yeah.
past the pain, but when your 5-year-old or 6-year-old says, I hate daddy, and do you mean that?
Yeah.
And the kid hour later, I love you, daddy, or is forgotten, all that. And they're speaking with their emotions, but the
Yeah.
human skills are, it's at a logarithmic scale of issues and difficulty when you re-engage post-military or many other careers, like those who travel on the road, or certain, like those who do business and they're out on the road all the time.
Right.
Uh, and it's tough, but it's fun when they get into that role because they get good at it. But when you have to come back to roost and you're now no longer a free range chicken, yet you have some boundaries. That's
Mhm.
one of the hardest things any human, worldwide, or especially in the US, can do in this day and age is
Right.
dwell time with your family and loved ones. That old phrase, the forest and the trees, all of a sudden the broken glass, milk spilled. It shouldn't be World War III, but
Yeah.
if it hits the right things, in a testosterone-led world that leads to anger. Who did that? Why? But
Yeah.
in as I'm learning, the caring, loving is, hey, are you okay? All right, and let's sweep this up. It has to do with conflict resolution skills that you have
Yes.
to refine. The military's actions, which they love, is hit the button, take it out. But life's not always
It's
about shooting barriers.
yes, it's not as cut and dry as a direct command in the military or
Business,
yeah,
close the
yep,
deal.
yes. You know what? That's so funny that you should mention that. We look at it from a business side, from a sports side, from a military side is precision, execution, win or loss. Boom, boom, boom. It
Correct.
seems that, and it doesn't take in consideration all of the mundane stuff, but also the things that don't follow the parameters of the rules of engagement. I can only imagine how frustrating that would be, especially coming from such a structured environment to an environment that might not be so defined. Like you said, Daddy, I hate you. Well, how do I deal with that? That's insubordination in the military. Go to your room. Or that's I've never thought of it from that point of view. Thank you for going down that path and being vulnerable. What do you see as necessary to continue to acculturate? This is still relatively fresh for you, but now that you've been in it for a little bit now, and let's say another friend's being released from the military or retiring, what are some of the pieces of advice that you would give to them? But then, what are the pieces of advice that you've received from people that have been in that game for a while now?
The first comment I'll make, and it's good news in the military, is everybody told me who was 1 or 2 or 5 steps ahead of me, retirement stage, years or months or whatever. It's so much better. And they usually have a smile. It's so much better. And I kind of understand now. I'm only 6 months or 7 months, what is it, February, 6 days removed, give or take. And it is better. I don't have this thing in the back, a backpack on
Yeah,
half there, notionally in the corner, ready to go out the door. It takes a while to get out of that mentality,
right.
and then slowly, from a medical standpoint, your adrenaline, your cortisol in the morning, they slowly go back to normal. Hopefully, your
Yeah,
adrenal glands aren't burnt out, but that would not be unexpected for those doing high stress jobs from 6 in the morning to 6 at night, or even beyond. 5 to 7 days a week when you're deployed. They call it your job in it, meaning you're always working. The high stress ones, like higher headquarters, like DC and Pentagon, Congress, Senate, all that. When you had that extra press, news on always on fire, they're using coffee, maybe
yeah,
3 or 4 cups a day to get through that. And so it really gets that heart rate going even more. Eventually, some people will give out. Luckily, I was able to get out of there. I was exhausted, but I will say I haven't drank coffee. I still drink tea. I'll drink
right.
coffee every now and then if I have a long drive or something. But what I learned was I do like decaffeinated coffee. I like the flavor. I learned everything in moderation. Your body talks to you, and it's only meant to go at XX
Yeah,
miles per hour. But when you add those, or even the young kids, I say those 18 to 30 or more into the energy drinks. When I grew up there, I think Mellow Yellow was the highest
yeah,
caffeinated beverage, and
yeah.
there might have been a Jolt too. And then in the early 2000s, during the military downrange, it was these free. drinks called Rippets. They were half a can or quarter can, but it was nice and free. But they were energy drinks. As I looked at the three main ingredients, like taurine creates a named after Taurus, feeling of well-being, and phenylalanine and caffeine. They are amazing in that there was more blood flow to my retina, so colors are better. My brain thought
Right.
was functioning better, but that there can also be a tail end where you crash. Once it wears off, you're even more exhausted than normal. So
Right.
tying all that together, getting at post-military, you have to use friends in faith if you choose to believe in that or something of that, or some kind of group of, maybe you're into Pokemons now,
Yeah.
as my kids
Yeah.
are. It's there's a huge following, let me tell you,
Yeah.
even adults and or
Yes.
whatever, sports fan. But I would say the ones that are better are probably the ones where, there's not a the sports fans. I'm a diehard sports fan, college football, but the only outcome with my fan group was either win it all or it's horrible and everybody's upset. So that's not very practical. That's a perfectionist.
Right.
But you have to find a fit where these other folks will be happy when the next Pokemon releases, and and it creates an excitement as long as not you're spending all your money. But that's just one group I'm giving an example of.
Yeah.
But you have to have those friends close by, and it is definitely different because you're not in your office space or whatever, or, wherever
Yeah.
you're operational, wherever you are tactical in your locker or whatever, and so you're not. It's so different not having two or
Right.
three people, and that's probably worth mentioning now. Was even prior to my military, when you're working in an office of tight knit, close people, it's normal to human bond and ask, "Oh,
Right.
how's your aunt doing? I heard she was in the
Yes.
hospital, right?" And like, "Oh, thanks for asking. They are doing fine." Now, I'm giving an example where somebody volunteers the information to
Yeah.
you because it upset them, and you're essentially validating how they feel and showing that you actually thinking about them, remember them, and
Right.
and those are good normal human interactions. How dare you talk about my family? At the end of the day, we're all humans dealing with human problems. Humans can help you get out of them. That's a little sad not having that right now, but I will transition to a full-time job most likely, and I'll find my worker friendlies and
Yeah.
do that.
Man, this has been so enlightening to me because to hear from a friend, that is something that has helped me to understand a lot now. I have to, this is a bit of humor, but when you brought up the Pokemon group, my wife got heavy duty, of all people, my wife gets heavy duty in Pokemon,
Really
right?
cool.
And then, you know how you have the ones where you're searching for things in the neighborhood or whatever? It was funny how many law enforcement and
Oh, the
ex-military
app.
were there. It was one of the most profound things I've ever seen. But now that you say that, it makes sense because there is another group with a mission that they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
And you've also helped me to look at that with a greater degree of empathy because before it's like, ah, that's just an escape. But if it's bringing like-minded people, man, there's a lot of patience that and understanding that needs to happen instead of assumptions, right?
Yeah, I've loved it because my two younger kids are boys who like them, especially my youngest, and
Right.
so it allows me to spend time with him and show an interest. I used to collect, I think, baseball cards, mainly baseball, when I was younger in the 80s,
Right.
and I don't think football was just quite popular yet, but it was neat because friends, we in the summer, like, hey, did you get so and so? We'd read the statistics, but it meant a lot to you when you're that
Yeah.
young. Like, oh wow, look at this card. And I think for my kids now, that's what I've liked about it. I know they might not love it forever, but it's the community passion for something that I love and respect about it because
Yeah.
I know I'll go on one diatribe here. There's
Please.
from the 80s, 90s. I remember somebody created the phrase that, the players, and we tend to put certain athletes and leaders on pedestals like they're perfect, and then you have some people, maybe critics, call them the player haters. They're always like, that sucks, they're horrible. It's amazing how humans are very moldable, and
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
preponderance. Ideally the right group is where everybody's more positive and
Yeah.
not hurting others, so that's where I have always defended some of the Pokemon people because some are
Mhm.
fanatical, and but at the end of the day, I'm like, hey, there's so many worse things that can be
Yes, the
enjoyed.
people could
Having worked some
too.
emergency medicine shifts in Miami as a resident, and then down there in the early 2000s, and that's the dangerous stepping point. If you're with
Yeah.
a group doing recreational drugs and
Yeah.
medically, we're always asking questions. Do you do this? Do you do recreational drugs? And I'll never forget, you've got to be down to earth to who your patients are. I just remember somewhere in Florida, this young girl's like, she's like, recreational drugs. I said, what is that? Doing drugs at the playground? No. Yes and no. Yes and yes, actually. Uh, and then I
What?
realized that in human to human interaction, you don't imitate other people, but you have to be able to communicate with who
Yes.
you're talking to and say, sorry, that's the fancy medical term for basically, are you using drugs for fun, for
Right.
enjoyment, or dependence? And I
Yes.
think we're kind of going down towards is, like we said, faith, family, friends,
Yes.
that you can put friends with an asterisk. There's some other folks out there who, hey, I've got something that can help you. And whether it
Yeah.
be alcohol, that's another common one where people will self-treat. And I hate to see that when they're going through a depression, something that's not temporary, that's normal. Adjustment
Yeah.
periods, those are definitely normal, but maybe something longer, 3 to 6 months of depression where somebody passed away, or
Yeah.
the transition is so tough. Their mood daily is down. In other words, where I'm going with all this is the drugs of addiction, addictive drugs, because
Yes.
perhaps there are good, maybe, humans have been around for a while. There were medicinals in the
Yes.
forest. They probably gave them to people and worked. As long as there's a medical definition of addicting, it requires some things such as metabolic changes when you don't take it, like increased heart rate, or you dry out, or changes your personality. Those are truly the addictive medications and things that are dangerous. You get a physiological response, like true chronic alcoholics who can get withdrawals, and that's where they need to get proper treatments. And some of the heroin addicts, that's a 5% of a society or
Yeah.
less that looks for the ultimate cure, which is, from what I've heard, I haven't used any of those. It
Yeah.
allows the brain, body, mind to kind of part ways. But when you have to use that to sustain, you're not following your life path of having to deal with reality. It's part of your life. That's the
Yes.
way I look at it too. We're all given tests, and some of them are in school and are written. Some are
Yeah.
the real world coexisting with the probably starting with whoever's under your roof. You do it with love and honor because the alternative is being single with no family, which can be tough too. But when you have children, they are spitting images and take all the good and bad that you do. So you've got to always make sure that not only you're taking care of yourself, but those others who you love and care for because you literally brought them in this world by your intents. Of course, I do still think there's some higher powers at work. And that's why I said probably the faith, family, friends are key ones to keep utilizing.
I love all of this. The reason why is when I look at the connection is key to maintaining that balance of not getting into a funk, but those groups, those units, whatever you want to call them, that provide that common ground. And you've also made me realize that anything that is good intent has to be utilized with a degree of moderation, including all these applications or social media or whatever it might be, because we could get drowned out in stuff that really is not conducive to not only our mental health, but also just our overall well-being. And so and the way you've done that, especially from that of a friend and knowing your family too, it's just to see the intensity that you have to deal with too. Very humbling to hear that. And so want to thank you for mentioning those things because I know it's a vulnerable space, but what I found is that this could be incredibly helpful. It already has to me, but hopefully to the people listening too, because it's okay to have that feeling, just to work through it together. Faith, family, and friends, man, powerful, powerful.
Yeah, I came from the military, and like I said, I've had some units where I've had the honor to be a commander. And I always state it with, hey, should you choose to have
Yeah.
faith in your life, if you have a family, if you have friends in today's society, you don't want to offend someone. That's unfortunately where we're at. I always try to be respectful to just make
Yeah.
sure you use them
Yeah.
versus not using anybody. And I think those were by just the population, colleges and military are very prone. You have 18 to 25-year olds. That's a very vulnerable time in our lives because we're still not adults. We look like adults. Our brains are still maturing, and that's probably why some of those destructive stimulants are more harmful when you're less than 18 or definitely 18 to 25s and the alcohol and some of those drugs because your brain's still developing and for me like I said like I remember when offered drugs and when I was in that age group I was like I'm fine I was just so excited to either be at parties or socially interacting that was enough stimulation for me that I was like wow this is a blast meeting all these
Yeah.
people music dancing probably has to do with the talks you have with
Yeah.
your parents, faith, family, friends, or having them because we call it cross checks. When I got to do a lot of flying in my career as a flight surgeon, like over 1,000 hours. The pilot's life and motto is incredible. In fact, I was thinking about it yesterday. So Mo, this is quite brilliant. Piloting, you have to be here now. You have to look at your checklist, always cross-checking, looking at your attitude indicator, wings level, speed, velocity, altitude, and looking for threats. There's a bird coming. That's not going to show up on your radar.
Yes.
What I loved about that was life's getting so hectic with, you got the watch,
Yeah.
some people have the glasses,
Yeah.
stimuli that you've got to remember. They used to call it fly the jet. Don't
Yeah.
get caught looking over here at something
Yes.
beeping, tap saturation. So life is like that. You've got to always be able to cross check. And that's where friends, some people of faith that you have as friends and family is, hey, should I be driving at 10:30 at night to go get frozen yogurt? As we get older and mature, like, well, hey, are you starving? You
Yeah.
craving? When the spouse is pregnant and have a craving, you might go get that. Yeah, but
Yes.
as you get older, wiser, you're like, well, it's dark. I'll probably have to go to the one store open. And a lot of those people out on the road at that time of day are not always rested. So
That's true.
the risk of accidents and your vision, you're using lights, you're not going to see things. So I guess what I'm going on with that was the pod's motto of just stay in the moment is a lost art, but it's something I was just thinking about the other day. When your mind starts getting busy, like we're talking about depressed thoughts, moods, is take some deep breaths and just say, all right, where am I today? I'm alive. I'm not deployed or getting shot at in medicine. There's not a patient in front of me that's this monitor's all beeping like dee, 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 and there's no lethal arrhythmia going on. In fact, I'm here by myself. So just take a deep breath, thank the higher powers that there's no reason for me right now to be agitated or nervous or looking for a threat. So just calm down and don't think too far about the past or the future. And that's they call that staying in the present moment or fly the jet. Having parents from India, the meditation and
Yeah.
that type of beliefs were taught to me as a kid from my grandparents and my parents. And I think that's the focus of meditation, which doesn't necessarily need to be an Indian or Eastern practice.
Yeah.
It's when you're at church and you sit quietly or at work, you take a moment of pause and or before if you're athlete, before you go do that, you stretch, you calm your mind down, and then as you start getting into your sport or whatever, you let go of all those thoughts. So that's probably why I think that's another key is staying in the moment. I need to remind myself of this every day. Once you put on a device in the news, the world is doing this, the markets are doing this, midterm elections are coming, and this is going on in the Middle East and
Yeah.
Russia, China, U.S. relations. Those will, those will trick your body into getting that heart rate up because it feels like there's some kind of tension. What do I do? I'm involved with this, but you're not. So
Yeah.
take a deep breath. The sun will rise. There may be conflicts in the future, but just try to focus right now. Hopefully, I'm not going too big of a diatribe there.
You're
No.
not because as soon as you said be here now, that truly is what it's all about. Being here now implies that you're focused on what's important now, but also making sure that you're not stressing over so many things that are completely out of your control. And or even if they're in your control, maybe it's not the time for that particular thing. And so as you were going through that checklist, it made me realize, matter of fact, I just wrote that down. I was secretly writing this down of the be here now. That's going to be what I'm going to be focusing on as well. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Or you could put it in my Air Force, fly the jet. I'm sure,
Yes.
race car drivers probably drive the car.
Yep.
F1 racers, they cannot do
They can't.
anything
That's
or
it.
or
Absolutely.
driving the family around. That's
Yeah.
another thing I noticed. I was spoiled going to and from work when I go with my wife and kids now. Hey, Dad. I'm like, time out. That is focused on the road, guys. Like, and it's funny because I will go, for work in the military. You'll go. We used to call it TDY or temporary duties, where you're always getting sent for training somewhere.
Right.
You're with your colleagues in a car, and like, hey, the questions aren't. They're usually on track. Hey, is that place good for lunch up ahead? Yeah. Okay, you got
Yeah.
navigation. Good. Give me directions. Whereas the kids' question is, hey, Daddy, look at that giant icicle on the left. It's the largest I've ever seen. It's incredible. Guys, I can't turn. Sorry. Or heaven forbid, I know you live out in the Mountain West. Like some of the roads are
Yes.
canyons, and guys, this is not a good time for me to look anywhere except what's in front. So sometimes the motto, drive the car, and but probably for us in our home environments or
Yeah.
work is just be at peace. Take some moments of peace if
Yes.
possible.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you for not only sharing your experience, but teaching me a lot of good things, especially that be here now. It's so incredibly important. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the transition continues. I have a feeling I might be speaking with you again if that's okay.
Yeah, sure, no problem. If I've learned anything in my short life, is doing medicine and military career is knowledge is to be shared, period. And humans need to share knowledge, things that could save somebody's life. The military, we call them lessons learned. Sometimes those are from actual deaths or catastrophic events, and we would write them up even they built a culture of that and you put them and hopefully people then review them and remember. But yeah, I'm always about sharing with you, Mo, and the world or whoever wants to listen lessons learned. I'm always ears too, because if it's something that can help me in my life or others, and it's something that was near catastrophic or life threatening or even just you know a big life mark of accomplishment, something career wise, then I'm always ears because knowledge is to be shared.